Hello, I welcome you to this great YouTube channel where we share skill and expand people's skills. Quite a lot of things will be happening in this channel. I want to encourage you and invite you to subscribe to this channel so that you can be part of this large number of people that are enjoying what is already happening in the channel. In this particular video, we are going to be looking at 4 powerful Excel functions that are used for summary. So you want to summarize large set of data. You want to be able to easily manipulate and handle your data effectively. We will be using the pivot table tool and then the pivot chart. We'll be looking at the SUMIF function, and we'll also be looking at the aggregate function, and to top it up, we will be using the SubTotal tool. So we'll be using tools versus function. So you are going to see how the SUMIF function and the aggregate function will help you to summarize data. And then we'll go back to Excel tools, pivot table, pivot chart, and the SubTotal tool. You are going to have an amazing experience in this session. So join me in the class as we see this together. So let's see how these functions and tools are going to help us to do calculations to summarize our large set of data. We have a fairly large data set here. I have about 213 rows of data of sales of products, the fruit, and from the country from where the sales are being done. Now, we are going to work with the SUMIF function first. We're going to see how the SUMIF function can help us to sum this data. So we're going to look at the SUMIF. The SUMIF, well, I've taken SUMIF, I've done it in details in my previous videos where I treated SUMIF, COUNTIF in much detail. So if you are looking forward to learn more about SUMIF, subscribe to my YouTube channel and then catch up with the video on SUMIF and COUNTIF. So I'll just take some brief lessons here on SUMIF. I will not focus much. So the SUMIF captures range. So you can see the screen tip here shows us the requirements. So the range, the criteria, and the sum range. So I'm going to provide the range, which is the criteria range, and I'll use the Control-Shift down arrow to make that selection. Then I'll put a comma and then pick the criteria. So the criteria of this is carrots, is the one I've specified here, and then comma, I'll pick my sum range, the range I'm summing from, and then I'll press enter. So if I use the enter key, I get my total sales by product using the SUMIF. Now you can see, but the one thing that we need to pay attention to is when you are dragging a formula function down, you need to consider that calculations in this situation are done relatively. So what we mean is it starts from B5 to B217, D5 to D217. So if I click somewhere here, you'll see that it's B9 to B221. 221 is beyond the table, and D9 to D221 is beyond the table. So you in SUMIF, for you to avoid error, you need to make your reference absolute. And so what it means is you add dollar signs to this to make it absolute reference. So this and this particular one will be made absolute reference so that we can get correct answer without being without the range leaving. So if you check here now, it's going to start from B5, B2, and 7. If you check here, so the range is fixed, and that's what we need. Now, if you want to learn more about Excel reference, talking about absolute reference, relative reference, and mixed reference, you can subscribe to my YouTube channel and catch up with the video on Excel reference, cell references. Right, so this is for SUMIF. Now I'm going to look at pivot tables. Pivot table will do something that looks like this, but in a more advanced way. In other words, you're not going to be using a function, you're actually going to be using a tool. So for you to make use of the pivot table, you have to position your cell pointer or your cursor within your data set. So let it be within this data, and then you go to the Insert tab, and then you pick Pivot Table. You pick, you can just click the Pivot Table button instead of dropping the arrow. So once you put your cursor within it, just click the button. There's an arrow here. This one takes care of selections when you're trying to indicate whether you're selecting a table or range, or you're selecting from external data source like from Access or SQL or from Power BI. But in this case, since we are working with Excel, we just go ahead and click the button at the top, and that will automatically select our range. So you can see that my table / range has been selected. And why is this? Because my cell pointer is within the data range. So that is one of the reasons. So I mean, it's very important for you to keep your data active. Your cell pointer must fall in the data range. Anyway, my own style is I put it at the beginning, but yours can be anywhere. So, well, let it be within, not outside. Now, so if we are printing our calculation on this existing worksheet, that is, we are not creating a new worksheet. We just want it to be done somewhere here. We have seen sales by product, so we can choose existing worksheet and then choose location. Location is very important. Otherwise, if you skip this and you click OK, then you get an error message. So location is where do you want to place this, your result. So I will say, okay, I want my result to be here. So I'll select the cell. Okay. I will select the cell. So if it is in another sheet, I will select the sheet tab first and then select the cell. So this is the location. Then I will click the OK button. So now I'm ready to provide what I want to summarize. So on the right side, I see pivot table fields. It says choose fields to add to report. And then you can see all the fields that I have in this, my data. I have order ID, product, category, amount, date, and country. Okay. So that's what I have here, order ID. So I want to do this summary this time. Okay, let me start with product. I want to do with product and then amount. So if you compare what I have here with what I have here, you'll see that they are the same. Apple sales, the same total. The banana sales, the same total. So this is the pivot table version of what the SUMIF could do. So the advantage of SUMIF is that SUMIF is a function. So let me say it's not necessarily an advantage, but it is the fact that being a function, you can dig deeper into your figures and do other things. You can add, functions to it. You can put a condition. For instance, you can say if a value equals to 2. So let me say if cell J4, I'm just trying to show you J4 equals to 2. then it should sum if. So sum if can be a condition for what should happen if that condition is there, or otherwise it should just put a 0. So I'm just tactically showing you. So if the value of J4 equals to 2, then the sum if will work. So you can see, so if I come here and I put the value of J4 to 6, I press enter, you can see that the sum if didn't work. It's showing me 0. So this is where the power of function comes in. You can subject it to condition, you can add some other function to manipulate it the way you want. So this condition that says if J5 equals to 2, it should do the sum if otherwise. So if J4 or J5 is now 2, then the sum if will be done. Okay. So that's about the sum if function. So you can subject it to a condition. But for the pivot table, it's a tool. So what it means is that you will make do with the results that the tools gives to you as much as you can. All right. So now you can also use the pivot table to do more. So let's say I want to insert. I'll select existing, choose location. I'll probably put it here on the bottom and then click OK. So I want to select country by amount. So I can see sales by country by amount. So this is the sales by country by amount. Okay. I can also take these same results and make it, a cross tab. So in which case I want to view the product and the column side. So we have 4 areas here. We have filter, column, row, and value. So if I want to make it a cross tab, so to see each of the country sales by product, of course I can bring, because country is in row, that's why we have it in the row side, and then product is now arranged in the column side, and then you have them there. And you can also say you want to filter by category, in which case you use your mouse button to drag category to filter area. And at the top, you see a filter option where you can now say, I want to filter by fruit, and then you see the results based on fruits. You can see the result based on fruits, or I want to filter by vegetable, and you see the results based on vegetable, or I want to filter based on all, and then you see that. So you can make use of the drag area. You can cross tab, you can use date and all others. So that's for pivot table. If you want to get more on pivot table, please subscribe and catch up with my video on pivot table and chart extensively. So for the pivot chart, all you just need to do is place your cell pointer or your cursor within the data, and then go to the insert tab and pick pivot chart. You just click it, and then you pick the type of chart you want, and then you click OK. So that gives you the pivot chart. If you want to get more on pivot table and charts extensively, please visit my video on pivot table and charts, where I handled this subject more extensively. All right, so we have seen the sum if, we have seen the pivot table. Now let's look at subtotal. So there is subtotal. There is subtotal function and this tool. In this case, I'm making use of the tool. So I'm going to copy this data, and take it to another sheet, another worksheet. So the subtotal function will help you to summarize your data, but in a different way. So you will have a subtotal placed at the bottom of each group of items. So subtotal will allow you to group your items according to their types, and then according to that type, the total will be placed at the bottom. So for this particular one, if you go, before you can apply the subtotal, the first thing to do is to sort. So you sort the data. So I can go to data tab and just simply click the sort A to Z. That will sort based on product. So as you can see, all apples are grouped together. So the purpose of the sorting is just to group all these items together. So now with this grouping, I can go back to the data tab, and towards the end far right side, I have the outline group and I have the subtotal. So with this subtotal to dialog box, I can apply subtotal to this data. So at each change in, this applies to what I used for sorting, and that is product. And then what function am I using? I'm using the sum function. And what am I applying the subtotal to? I'm applying the subtotal to amount. And then I'll leave all this. So if I want to put page break in between each group of item, I'll click this. Put the summary below that, replace the current subtotal. So if I have done the subtotal before and I want to replace it, then I'll check this. But in this case, I'll just leave that and just click OK. And then I have my subtotal appended at the bottom of each, as you can see. Can you see that? So now with this, I can easily pick. There are three numbers at the left, top, right, as you can see, just here. Very good. So now we have 1 will give me the grand total, 2 will give me the subtotals, and 3 will drop everything down. Okay, that takes care of subtotal. So 1 for grand total, 2 for the subtotals. So you can see the same result with pivot table and SUMIF. And then, so you can see that these tools gives you results from different perspectives. The last one is aggregate. This gives the total summary of all values. Now, aggregate will do what the sum function will do, but I'm just going to show you the difference and the reason why you should use aggregate sometimes. So let me start with the sum function. I'm going to sum all these values and then close the brackets, and that gives me the total of all the sales. Now, if I'm going to use aggregate, I will say aggregate. So aggregate comes with some parameters, requirements. So the first one is, which function are you using now? So I'm using sum. So which means with aggregate, you can do more than just summing. That's one difference. With aggregate function, you can do average from here. You can do count, you can do countate, and max, can product, can do several, small, large, percentile. So some of the statistical analysis can be done. So you just pick the number 19 for quarter or 11 for variable for variance. Then you have a sum. So we are picking sum. So you can type the number or double click to get the number. Then you put a comma. So now this is very, very important. This is where you mark the difference. So for instance, 0 says ignore nested subtotal and aggregate function. So in case you have a subtotal nested into this, this can ignore in the calculation. So in this case, I want to choose this, ignore hidden rows, error values, nested subtotal, and aggregate function. I'll double click and I'll choose the third one. Then I'll pick my array, which is the data, and then close the bracket and hit enter. So I have the same result. So someone will say, well, why if you want to do sum, why use this? Why not just go for the sum function? So, but I'm going to show you where the difference comes. So now I want to apply a filter button to this, and I want to filter by product, and I will filter out all the sales of Apple and click OK. So at the top here, the sum function still gives me the total sales, but the aggregate, because I gave it the condition number 3, so it ignores all the ones that are taken out and gives me the total. So what it means is that with the aggregate function, you can easily summarize data and see the total with the support of the, what do you call it now, the filter button. So I can do banana and I'll see the total for banana just appearing right there immediately. I can filter further. I can say, okay, let me have from France, banana from France, and it shows 36,094. So you can see that the sum function remains where it is while the aggregate changes. So you can see the power of the aggregate function. Another thing, so, but if you want to get more, I mean, this aggregate function is treated extensively in another video. So you can look at my video where that is done. Now, another thing you can see here is, let's say I decide to hide some rows. Let's see if it's going to have difference. So for sum, it didn't budge. I mean, the total is total. But for aggregates, the hidden rows are not added. So in a situation whereby you want to exclude subsection of your data by hiding them, and you still want the total to, you want the total to decrease based on the hidden, use the aggregate function. And there are quite a lot of more things to learn there. All right, so this is where I'm going to stop in this session. I hope you've enjoyed this session, and I will see you another time when we will discuss other functions. So subscribe to my YouTube channel and click the notification button so that you can catch up with new updates. See you in another session, and bye for now.